Art is so powerful. Art has the power to make you laugh, to make you cry, to make you think about something differently. It can rally people around a movement in a way that nothing else can. I guess 5 years after college, things were a little down for me. I was going through a divorce. It was one of the worst times in my life. I wanted to pack up and move back to Texas. And I realized that I needed to really use my art to pull myself out of what I was going through. That was the moment I started my Sunday sketch series and just creating art. I didn't care what people said about it. I was gonna create some art and post it. So I really started to use art as therapy, and I would highly encourage everyone out there to do that. It doesn't matter what level of expertise you feel like you are as an artist. You know, just create art. 7 years into my Sunday sketch series, and people are saying that they use my art as therapy. I'm just blown away by that, and I realize, like, yes, art has this power. Like, there's a magical quality to it, and I just love that it can do that. And also, art can not only help you process the tragic things, but also, you know, be there for the celebratory moments. So recently I created this piece called Home is Here that really highlights these DACA recipients that were marching through the streets. And, you know, young folks who were brought to this country and it's the only home that they know and are under threat of being sent to somewhere that they don't know. And just to see the fight and the passion that they have for wanting to make sure that this legislation goes through, I just wanted to, you know, really capture that joyful spirit that they had going through the streets. So it's moments like that where I love to create, you know, celebratory works of art that are not, and they might be born out of some tragic or some very difficult fight, but there is a lot of times there's celebration that comes out of that. I think artivism can be applied not only nationally, but also on a local scale. It's kind of like how we say it's not just important to vote for who you want for president, but also, you know, mayors, district attorneys. There's so many levels to this, and there are so many different ways your art can be applied and reach certain people. You might want to do an art campaign that targets, you know, just a few hundred people in your town, and that's totally cool. And especially in relation to politics, I think, you know, you can apply your art to pretty much any scale that, you know, seems fit. On top of the power of art, there's also that factor of the tool of social media and how powerful that is. And I just want to encourage everybody, be fearless in putting your work out there. Like, don't hold back. Just put it out there. And a lot of times, you know, that fear, it's a fear that I had at one point, it's a fear of being judged. You know, it's why people don't like public speaking or, you know, putting their art out there. It doesn't matter what people are always gonna have something to say. But I think if you have something extremely important that you wanna say, put it out into the world, put it on the web. Remember, nobody can approach this topic the way that you can from your unique perspective. That's one thing I learned, you know, as I was weekly doing my Sunday sketches. I got to the 5-year mark and I was like, okay, maybe it's time to stop. And somebody's like, well, if you stop doing your Sunday sketches, like, who's gonna tell these stories from your perspective the way that you do? Only you and only I can tell a story from the perspective that I have, from the perspective that you have.
A lot of times people say, I want to change people's minds. I want to reach people. I want to share my story. I want to change the world. Of course you do. But what do you want to do today? Let's start a little smaller and specific. One of the main things I ask my students after I review their first drafts of short stories or essays is, what is the why of your work here? What is it that you're really trying to do and communicate to your reader? And it's an important question for every writer to consider, because writing without purpose just becomes aimless, words on the page, and those words can be beautiful, but if there's no sense of purpose, you leave the reader wondering, what did I just read? What am I supposed to take away from this? And I think it's important to inspire questions in your reader, but not those kinds of fundamental questions. A lot of times in nonfiction, what you're trying to do is increase awareness about a topic. And so when you're thinking about what you want the reader to take away, do you want to give them a call to action where they try and do something in the world? Do you want them to change the way they think about a given topic? When I'm writing an essay, before I really get into it, I sit down and think about everything that I need to know to credibly write on a given topic, because I may be aware and think I'm informed, but in general, I probably only have a surface awareness. And so I want to be able to go deeper. And so I tend to think about questions that I have about a topic. And I tend to also assume that the readers are going to have similar questions. And so I start with questions and I try to simply find the answers to those questions. And so when you know a lot about what you're writing about, you can refute nonsense. And oftentimes you can circumvent the kinds of naysaying that readers are going to try and approach you with in the essay itself. One of the things that I always try to do is acknowledge that there are multiple points of view and multiple ways of thinking about a given issue. And then I use my research to support what it is that I'm saying, and oftentimes to prove what it is that I'm saying, because I like to be right. Depending on who you are and the subject position that you inhabit as a person in the world, it can really be useful also to refute claims that you are being emotional or that you're playing identity politics, when you can back your claims up with research, when you can show how bias exists in measurable and quantifiable ways. You might be thinking it's not fair that you have to do this kind of work where you have to support your claims, but frankly, the world isn't fair. This is the world that we live in, and oftentimes we need to support what we say with evidence. You know, as artists, we want to just write what we want to write and say what we want to say, but when you're putting nonfiction into the world and you want to be published, you have to think about how you can put your work into the world in the best way possible, and supporting your work with solid and thorough research is invaluable.
One of the reasons why I love creating art is the fact that you can take your thoughts and ideas and manifest them in the physical realm. My practice for me is a medium through which I connect past and the present to reimagine a more inclusive and diverse future. I love working in the speculative fiction realm with sci-fi elements. It helps me create this wonderful world that I can escape to. Representation is a very important aspect of my art practice as well. I think it's very important to identify who you are and where you come from, your roots or your heritage, and reflect your personality into the work that you do. I also just happen to be part of a lot of marginalized communities, including my Dalit community and the queer culture, and just generally being a brown creative and person. I love the fact that people reach out to me that belong to my same community, and I love to be able to have a conversation and relate to somebody in that deeper level. In the beginning of my journey, the artworks that I created were more aesthetically inclined. As I've kept going, my characters now have a fully fleshed out idea. They have backgrounds, they represent certain things, they have a powerful voice. And this is something that has taken many, many years for me to arrive at, and is still an ongoing process. A good way to figure out what you want to say is to identify different things that you're interested in and bring those into a unique cocktail that represents you. So now we will be doing a little exercise that breaks down this process and helps you find what you want to say. All you need is a piece of paper and any pen. We can start this by jotting out broad categories such as books, or music, movie, and animation or cartoons. So now start populating these different categories with things that you like. For instance, a book that I like, book series, is Dunes, and hip hop, Fantastic Planet as an animation, and Strange Days as a movie. As you fill out these categories, you might be able to see connections and similarities between these things. For me, for instance, I can see ideas of revolution, dystopia, otherworldly characters, cosmos. So now we will jot those commonalities down. Revolution, fantastical worlds, cosmos, dystopia, aliens, and the unknown. And another thing that's common in all of these are a strong protagonist or lead character as well. Writing these down will also be a good idea for you to start out on your journey of identifying what you want to say through your artworks. Be truthful to who you are. You all have something very uniquely you. Do identify that and explore. You might feel pressured to keep up with trends, but it's very important to keep in touch with yourself as well in order to create a more authentic journey.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our latest videos.